Okay, so today I am going to be doing my 33 subscriber special. So today I've decided to talk about Freemasonry. So the first thing that I want to start speaking about is that Freemasonry is basically a secret society, and there are lots of secret societies. It's not just the Illuminati, but Freemasonry is probably the biggest one that everyone publicly knows in the world. So today I'm gonna start speaking about why the number 33, and that is the reason being is because 33 is the highest order of Freemasonry. So there's different levels. The third order, the highest order, is the 33rd degree. So um, once you start noticing these things, you're gonna kind of notice it all around you. Especially in a big city like London, there's a lot of videos explaining about 33s and their numbers. So how do we actually spot Freemasonry? So there's loads of symbolisms which I think is not hard to spot. The first thing is obviously the eye, the all-seeing eye. When they all cover their one eye, people think that it represents the gel, but I don't think it does. I think it's just part of the secret society of Freemasonry. And that's not to say Freemasonry is not a scary thing. You can find it scary, that there's a group of powerful people that control the world. But realistically, once you start worrying about conspiracy theories and you go too into it, it's going to consume your life. So I don't suggest doing that. This video is just to point out some interesting 33s and some coincidences, you can say. And how many coincidences does it take to actually believe something? So I've spoken about symbolism. There's a lot of 33 symbolism, which I'm going to get into. And also, one other thing that I've seen is, isn't it funny how on the news report they all have the same script?
Of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets without checking facts first. Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Doesn't that just show that there is some type of central government or something controlling the media outlets? So today what I want to speak about is 33. So what can we look at in terms of 33? We can look at the equator, the world. Let's look at some major events that happened 33 degrees north of the equator. So there's a lot of cities which are north of the equator, and I'm just going to name some. There's Baghdad, there's Damascus, there's Jerusalem, there's Dallas, Texas, and there is Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now I'm going to explain each one of them, and I think you can kind of connect the dots, but let's go through it. Baghdad, this is between the Euphrates and the Tigris River. It's where they converge. This was the center of the Islamic Golden Age during the 8th to the 13th century. So it's a major city, and it still is a major city today. Damascus, Damashq, this is the capital of Syria, and this is also and this was the capital of the Umayyad Caliphate. Next one, Jerusalem, Palestine. There's not much that needs to be said there. I think that one's very self-explanatory in terms of Israel. Now, these three places are part of the old world, and this is what Freemasons believe. Now, let's move on to the new world, because that was all before the 21st century. Now, let's look at the 21st century. What's been happening in the 21st century? The first one that I mentioned is Dallas, Texas. What happened there? The assassination of JFK in 1963. JFK went against the government and he got killed, he got assassinated. That's another deeper topic, but that is a conspiracy. The next thing, the Trinity site. The Trinity site, New Mexico, this is where they tested from the Manhattan Project. This is where they tested the atomic bomb that they were going to drop, and they did end up dropping it in 1945 in August, and that was on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So of course that is a nuclear disaster, and a lot of Japanese people died, and those cities are uninhabitable because of the radiation, and no one will ever be able to live there ever again. So how does this relate to Freemasonry? Well, first of all, who actually dropped that bomb? because the person who created the bomb was Oppenheimer, but the person who dropped the bomb and who gave the order was Truman. And this guy, he was a Freemason, and he was the highest degree of Freemasonry. He was the 33rd order of Freemasonry, the highest order that you can get. So those were some spectacles that I just spoke about. And a side note, Truman was actually the 33rd president of the United States. So isn't that interesting? The next thing that I want to talk about is spectacles. This is a bit into numerology and the number 33, as we've been going through. So what the Freemasons like to use is they like to use triangular numbers. Why? Because I'm not sure why actually, but they look nice. The triangular numbers are 1, 3, 6, 9. So now once you start looking at dates with those numbers in it, you're going to kind of notice a pattern. I'm going to give you a few examples. 9/11, that is a triangular number. And that's another bigger conspiracy, which I believe was me personally, I believe it was an inside job because there's too much evidence to say it's not. Next thing, the moon landing in 1969 is a conspiracy. People don't believe it. What are the numbers? 1969, they are triangular numbers. And then finally, what I've already spoken about, the assassination of JFK. When did this happen? This happened on the 22nd of November, 1963. And they are all triangular numbers. And if you actually add up 22 and 11, it becomes 33. But in my opinion, that is pushing it a bit too far. But it is a conspiracy, and it's interesting to look at these numbers, and they are all triangular numbers. And one thing that I'm not going to say it clearly, but three sides make a triangle, and three sides make another triangle. And what happens when you make those triangles into a star? That's just some food for thought, and I find it quite funny. Why is all this important? Why do people actually want to become a Freemason? Why do all of these artists show the eye and they do all these deplorable acts? Because if you've seen Eyes Wide Shut, there's literally a scene where Stanley Kubrick, he puts it in the film, and he basically shows a sex party full of deplorable acts with masks and stuff, but people were saying it was a part of a cry for help. It was showing the reality of society in terms of what happens in these Freemasonry parties. But anyway, why is this important? Why do people actually want to join the Freemasons? First of all, you see all of these spectacles and you think, wow, I want to be a part of this club. Why? Because I gain more power and I gain more responsibility and I move up in life. And part of it is, of course, selling your soul. That's what people believe that happens. You sell your soul. An extreme example is Jeffrey Epstein, which is another rabbit hole. Now, there are three reasons why these big spectacles actually happen. The first thing is that it's called revelation of method. So the first thing that happens is once the method gets revealed, it causes learned helplessness. So we know about all these things, but we can't actually do anything. We can't rise up and we can't overthrow the government because nothing's really going to change. So that makes you feel helpless. The second thing is it's a karmic responsibility. These people are telling you there's so much evidence. They don't want that karma, that responsibility to say it was on them. They want to tell God that, look, we told the people, they just didn't do anything. They didn't change anything. Because the leaders believe that God judges them. Finally, attention capture, as I've spoken about. These are things that are never forgotten, and one reason is because of the triangular numbers like 9/11, 1963. I just want to talk about my position as a Muslim. I think when there's so many coincidences, it's hard to believe, and you have to kind of shun the idea that you have to believe everything that the government tells us. We can't believe that the government doesn't lie. We can't believe that the government is too stupid. And at the same time, there's too much evidence. Just because there's no confessions doesn't mean that it didn't happen. Because the evidence is there, I think it's clear enough night and day. Now, as a Muslim, we believe in the unseen. The story of Musa alayhi salam, there was magic. There were three magicians, and when Musa alayhi salam dropped his staff on the ground and it turned into a snake, the magicians, they prostrated. Why? Because they knew what they were projecting was just an illusion, and they knew that the real power came from Allah, which is why they prostrated straight away. So we believe in the unseen, but once you deal with magic and all these things, it takes you out of the fold of Islam. Why? Because one of the creedal beliefs is that we believe in the unseen, and once you tap into that, you've essentially destroyed your position. and that is what takes you out of Islam. And a lot of people say that you'll never be a Muslim ever again. But my final message is that you have to remember that we can see all these things around the world, all these injustices, all this Freemasonry, all this magic happening, and the symbolism is there, like these checkerboards, etc., and these numbers. But you have to remember that Allah is greater than magic. Allah has created these tests. Allah has created everything around us. Allah is Khaliq, Khalaq. He's the creator, and Allah is Mujib and Qareeb. Allah is the responder. Allah is Mujib. Allah is Qareeb. Allah is near. He is always there. He's Sami'un Basir. He hears and he sees everything. So as a Muslim, these conspiracies shouldn't make you scared, but at the same time, you should open up your brain that these things can be real. And you shouldn't just believe everything that the government tells you. And that's something that I've recently learned. So yeah, that was my 33 subscriber special. Let me know if I should talk more about some conspiracies.